Good afternoon, Zimbabweans. Makadi Murie, Zimbabwe. Anubonani. I know it's a good evening in other areas. Good evening, Zimbabwe. Good evening, South Africa, Mozambique, Botswana, South Africa. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to get started right away because we have a very important person here. But this is he is in Zimbabwe, and Magets Anugona. Dr. Madzorera, thank you so much for joining. Zimbabweans, we are joined here by Dr. Madzorera, the Secretary for Health for the MDC Alliance. Anzima makanyararei vanhu vari kubvunza Dr. Madzorera vari kubvunza. But we are with him today. He's going to give us an update of what is going on in Zimbabwe as far as COVID-19 is concerned, amid fears that Zimbabwe has now become the epicenter of the deadly COVID-19. Dr. Madzorera, please take a few minutes to greet our viewers and listeners.
Thank you very much, Chief. Makadiko Vanare Zimbabwe, Varipasi Pose, how are you, comrades and friends?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, and I hope we're going to share useful ideas today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madzorera, for agreeing to this interview. And yes, Dr. Madzorera, you just know we are joined here by people from the United Kingdom, Australia. I'm seeing some are logging in from Zambia. I'm watching from Uzumba, UMP, Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe. And of course, Gertrude Ma is right here in the United States. So you are addressing the whole world here. Please give us an update of what is going on in Zimbabwe. We are just hearing that people are dying, people are dropping dead. What's the situation like?
Thank you very much, Chief. The first thing I want to say is that the COVID-19 pandemic is not a political issue. It's not something that discriminates according to religion or politics or anything else. So as Zimbabweans, we must really come together and fight this pandemic. What is happening right now in Zimbabwe is pathetic because it is true that the number of cases that we are beginning to see is really skyrocketed. We are seeing the epidemic go to very new levels. Since I would say the last month, yes, people are dying. And I don't think we're recording all the numbers of those who are dying. Many people die before they are even tested. But we are just seeing an increase in the mortality rate in Zimbabwe. And that is very scary. We as health workers are extremely scared about what is happening because we are seeing a lot of cases. And, you know, by the time the results come, because the results take a long time to come, you have already attended to COVID-19 patients. The exposure is great. And we have a lot of problems that we can talk about today, including the lack of personal protective equipment among health workers in all sectors, public and private. And so that is an overview of the COVID-19 situation in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, so you are a medical doctor yourself. Can you tell us of the situation? We've seen nurses, some nurses downing their tools, saying that they are not being given protective equipment. What is it like? What is the situation like where you work? I don't know if you are in private practice or you also go to government hospitals. What is the situation like? Is it that dire? Because you remember when COVID started, Zimbabweans in the diaspora, in UK, in America, in Australia, everywhere, they got together, bought gloves, bought equipment, protective equipment for nurses and doctors. And the situation was dire then. Is it still the same?
It's worse, actually. And if Zimbabwe even needed the help and the cooperation of the people in the diaspora, it is now. The nurses downing tools is not because they don't want to work. It's because they are being exposed. We have nurses and doctors who are working without proper protective equipment. You know very well that I'm treating a highly infectious condition here in this patient, but you are completely unprotected. Even the masks that we must wear, you know, are scarce. You don't have. We are reusing masks. We are reusing everything. Things that should be disposable. You should wear gloves and throw them away after every patient. It's difficult. It's impossible when there is no supply. So that is the problem we have, and we sympathize with the nurses in the government sector because the government has not provided enough personal protective equipment for them. But I'm in the private sector. Even in the private sector, we are really suffering. You know, yes, we have to buy the PPE, but you go to a hospital, it's not your hospital. And there has to be personal protective equipment in that hospital, and you find the hospital is struggling to buy personal protective equipment, and we are being extremely exposed. And our fear right now is that we can easily have a half or three-quarters of the health workforce infected. In fact, I know of a maternity unit right here in the Midlands, which was reported to have had all their midwives infected by the COVID-19. And that is a serious issue. Remember, not everybody with COVID-19 infection comes in with symptoms, with a fever. That whole gimmick of measuring temperatures is just a waste of time. Most people with COVID-19 infections don't have a high temperature when they come to your institution or when they walk into a OK supermarket. Everybody at this point in time should be considered as having COVID-19 infection and should be treated as such. That means we must apply the universal precautions at this point in time. That's how high our epidemic has gone right now in Zimbabwe. That means we must wear gloves and personal protective equipment when we see every single patient, because you don't know who is carrying the virus and is not symptomatic. And we are told about 85% of people with the virus are actually not symptomatic. And that's very scary if you're a health worker.
And I was listening to an audio in the morning here. It was saying that there are people that are testing negative, what they call false negative, when they are actually positive and they have the symptoms. And this person was saying, you are now treating patients based on the symptoms that they are displaying vis-a-vis the tests that they would have obtained. So there are people that are negative, but they actually carry the virus. How true is that?
That's extremely true. So what happens is we have several tests that can be done for COVID-19. The cheapest test is the antibody test. And the reason why people go for the cheapest test is because the government has not taken it upon itself to look at COVID-19 as a national public emergency and fund the fight against COVID-19. We know the resources for COVID-19 have been looted. There is nothing to use. And that is the problem. So people go for the antibody test and they come out negative. Why? Because the antibody test will only become positive after some days, about 10 days or so. You don't form antibodies as soon as you get an infection. So the antibody test costs about $10. And that's the test that everybody goes for because they don't have money. The real test that should be done at the beginning of the illness, the COVID-19 PCR test, costs roughly about $60 in most laboratories. Most people can't afford that. And so they will not do it. They'll go for the cheap test that will give us a false negative at the beginning. It will become positive later, much later. You know, when you are very symptomatic, probably about 10 days after you got your infection. And that's the problem that we have right now. Yes, there is no test on earth that is 100% sensitive and 100% specific. But we do know that at the beginning of the infection, we must do an antigen test or a PCR test. And later on, we can do the antibody test. And it is the poverty, the lack of money that is causing people to go for the test that we know will be negative at the beginning.
Well, Zimbabweans across the world, we are talking to Dr. Madzorera here, the Secretary for Health for the MDC Alliance. Please share this video so that we pass this information on to as many Zimbabweans as possible. Let me get a question here from Ratidzai Hunda. She's saying something, and I'm going to ask a question from there. She's saying, kunyepa, anzi kunyepa vanhu vanonyanya, vanhu ngavataure mafigures chaiwo, kwete kuedzera. And doctor, there's this people are saying the government, particularly Emerson Mnangagwa, has contributed to the deaths that we are having now, the high rate of COVID infections and deaths. Because when people were dying in South Africa, Zimbabwean government was not coming out true with all the numbers of people that were dying. And people became complacent. People relaxed. For some reason, they were saying people in Zimbabwe are not being killed by COVID-19. Do you think that could have contributed to the high numbers that we are having now, that people relaxed? And now we have so many people that have been infected.
Yes, well, let me answer Ratidzai first. People are not lying. We know people are dying. We are the people on the ground. We see them dying. We are the ones who
in terms of numbers, of the people that are dying and infected. Like she's saying, the government has been lying. Yes.
Oh, that's very good. That's very good. I get it now. I'd taken the opposite meaning of that.
Okay.
Yes. So she's right in that sense that there are more people dying than we are actually recording. This could have been avoided. You are right. This could have been prevented.
Maybe you are right. You need to answer Ratidzai. Let me read it again. Mafigures chaiwo kwete kuedzera. Yeah, so you were right. She's saying that the numbers are not as high as you are saying. Okay, so you can respond to her.
So I'm saying that we are not exaggerating. We are the people who sign the death certificates. We see the people dying. We are the ones who are admitting them into hospital. Right now, I have several patients who can't be admitted into hospital. They are very sick. They need to be on oxygen support, but there is no single hospital in my city that admits COVID-19 patients. That is a disaster, and we have many cities like that, and it's a problem. So having to refer all the patients to Harare and Bulawayo for admission is a problem. Some of them are so sick that you can't refer them. People are dying. That's one thing I can say. The second thing is, Chief, you asked the question: did the government, in particular, you mentioned the president of the nation, who is the leader of this state and government, did they contribute to this place we are in right now? Yes, they did. They contributed in many ways. First of all, we saw the looting of COVID-19 funds. We should be having enough personal protective equipment in every public institution in Zimbabwe. That has not been addressed. We've not had any, serious prosecution of anybody. We have not had any recovery of the monies that were looted, donor funds. Secondly, at the beginning, people didn't take it seriously. We had a cabinet minister saying, yeah, this is a punishment from God for the Americans and other people who impose sanctions on us.
But she's now COVID positive herself.
Yeah, that was reckless. When we deal with these international, disasters, these pandemics, you never talk like that because you don't know when it's going to hit your country, and it has now hit. We were very relaxed at the beginning, and we did not do what was necessary. We kept the borders very porous. We kept the Chinese coming in. I remember a bunch of Chinese coming into Zimbabwe, labeled as COVID-19 specialist doctors. Now, there's no COVID-19 specialist at this point in time because knowledge, information about COVID-19 is still evolving. There is nothing that the Chinese could have taught us that is not known already by the doctors in Zimbabwe. We also have specialist physicians, but even them, the specialists in Zimbabwe, are still learning. We haven't got all the answers to COVID. So to import a bunch of Chinese and say they are COVID specialists, what did they bring? We didn't see any new treatment they brought. We didn't see any change in the trajectory of the pandemic. So we have contributed. The government has contributed to the escalation of this pandemic in Zimbabwe, particularly in terms of lack of border controls. You look at the recent statement by the president. They say we are banning all road transport. We are closing borders. That means we are closing the borders that are used by the poor people. But aeroplanes can continue to fly in. I mean, aeroplanes bring in the infection much faster. You can fly from the UK to Zimbabwe in 10 hours and bring the infection in a very short time and go back and be out before we even know who brought the infection. And so we are now trying to discriminate the rich from the poor and trying to give certain privileges to the rich. It doesn't help. This disease does not know socioeconomic status. It doesn't know that you are rich or poor. It affects everybody and it kills everybody. So this is one time when rich and poor have got to embrace and say, let's fight this thing together. We are in it together. It doesn't know whether you're a politician and you're powerful or you're just a poor and you are a villager. It doesn't care.
That's very sad. And I was talking to someone from Nyaradzo and a nurse at Parelenyatwa. I know maybe you may not confirm this, but they were telling me that at Nyaradzo they are getting over 100 bodies COVID related every day. And someone was almost arrested when she talked about the many bodies that were lying in Parelenyatwa as the number of people that are dying almost every day. And that was just Harare.
Yes, you are right. I can't confirm figures because I don't have the network, the national network to confirm figures in every city. But we do, the government knows. The government knows that people are dying en masse, and the government knows that the rate of death has just gone out of proportion and it needs to be controlled. We know it because in a small city like Kwekwe, we are now seeing a lot more deaths than we've ever seen in the last 8 or so months. That is scary. And when people start dying, when your neighbors start dying, your friends and relatives start dying, then you know it's serious business. It's no longer something that is talked about on radio and television only. It's now very personal. And we are seeing it very personally. People we know are dying. I wouldn't be surprised if that report from Harare is true. Because when you consider the density, the population density in Harare, that can very well be true.
So in Kwekwe, are there any COVID centers? Are there any COVID hospitals? Because we know that in Harare, there is one hospital where the rich and famous are going, and it's very expensive. It's beyond, ordinary people. Do you have such hospitals, private hospitals in Kwekwe?
No. All the COVID patients I have admitted to hospital, it has been really accidental. We admitted before we knew they were COVID patients. And there is so much panic when eventually you test and discover, no, this is actually COVID, when the patient deteriorates. We don't have a COVID center, a COVID hospital in Kwekwe. And that's pathetic. Because at the beginning, the Kwekwe General Hospital had started renovating a ward, which had been designated to be a COVID ward. We don't know what happened. Suddenly, somebody changed their mind. It's no longer a COVID ward. But the sad situation is there is a hospital in Redcliffe that was actually renovated by the city council at great cost. I was talking to the mayor just yesterday. He told me they renovated it. They put in some beds and some 4 ventilators in the hospital. It's been lying idle now for 3-4 months. It's not being used. And I keep saying, why are we not opening our hospital in Redcliffe? And I'm told, oh, the governor said he wants to come and open it himself. Why do we need a politician to come and open a hospital? What you want? You want to cut a ribbon? What do you want to do? The hospital is ready. We want to admit patients. They should have given the city council the go ahead to deploy nurses. The doctors are there, and to start using the hospital. Now, if I want to admit a patient right now, as I actually want to tonight, I have to send to Guero or Blawayo or Harare, and that is a great cost. Now, the cost of admission, you are right. A lot of the private hospitals are charging something like $5,000 deposit, US dollars I'm talking about here, for admission into the intensive care unit. And many people just give up before they even start.
Yeah, so yeah, the situation is dire. As we get to round up, I know you are going to come back again tomorrow as we talk about the lockdown. But before you go, can you tell us if there are any remedies that Zimbabweans can rely on, because they can't go to the hospitals? There's nothing in the hospitals. Is there anything that you can talk about? Are there any over-the-counter medications that people can access or get to help themselves? Because it looks like most people are now saying Zimbabweans are on their own. We don't have a government. We don't have anyone who is fighting on our side. Is there anything you can advise Zimbabweans to take?
That's a very, very good and important question, but one which is extremely difficult to
I know. Yes.
There are a lot of remedies that have been flying around on the internet and on other social media platforms, particularly WhatsApp. I don't see any harm in trying those remedies if you're at home. Remember, for most people who fall sick with COVID-19, they will not need admission to hospital. They will not need a ventilator. Most people will not. They will recover at home. So we are treating a lot of these patients at home, and there are some home remedies that they use. I don't see any harm in steam inhalations, which people are promoting. I've not seen any scientific paper really which says that works, but I don't see any harm in it. We've used that for a long time, even as Africans. That's a way of treatment that our ngangas have used for a long time. Steam inhalations. When you take onions or garlic, or you take plenty of lemons. In fact, lemons are good. They have a lot of vitamin C. Remember, even when you have an ordinary flu, usually the doctor prescribes some vitamin C for you. You don't have to buy it from a chemist. Why not just eat the lemons, drink the juice, people are using garlic, ginger, and so forth. These are all safe remedies, which even if you are not sick, you can take. If they help, why not? Let's use them. But of course, when you go to the clinic, there are other things that we can do. We can treat pneumonias. We can try to cool down the inflammatory storm that happens within you when you have a COVID-19 infection using medicines. and we are treating a lot of people as outpatients. But there are a few who will need admission, and that's really where the problem comes.
Well, Doc, thank you so much for being with us, but I can't let you go before you just give us an overview of what is going on. Hopo Chingono is in jail. Our mayor is also in jail, and we understand that he's displaying COVID symptoms. I know you can't diagnose him, but that's what we have been reading. What's your take on all these arbitrary arrests?
Yeah, the situation in Zimbabwe is extremely pathetic. There are people whose only agenda is power retention. Our government is concerned about power retention. They are not interested in the welfare of the people. What they don't know is that if you take care of the welfare of the people will retain the power for you. They will keep you in power because you are taking care of their needs. But rather they choose cruel means. They choose to arrest people who shouldn't be arrested. You have one person who reports that there is corruption in this department. That person gets arrested and does not get bail. The perpetrator, the corrupt person who has stolen money, is released overnight. He goes to court in his suit, while the human rights activist who is trying to point out the errors in society, it goes in chains, legs and feet and hands in chains. That's pathetic. I don't know about the condition of Obu Chingono. I haven't seen him. Even Mayor Mafume. But these are people who are being persecuted for doing the right things, for standing for the people. I'm not a lawyer. I can't speak about any alleged crime. But what I know is that those guys haven't killed anybody. They haven't committed a crime that warrants them being incarcerated for so long. We know people who have committed greater crimes who are walking free in the country. So it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate political situation. But there is a God in heaven. I always want to end up by telling people that there is God in heaven who is watching over everybody, and that every knee one day will bow to him. There is no
Amen.
running away from the power of God in running the affairs of men. I believe God is allowed the regime at this point in time to do what they are doing. It's for a season. A time for reckoning will come, not from us, but from God himself. So if I were them, I would try to be on the good side of God in preparation for that time.
Yeah, and the very last question. The USA President Trump was brought down partly by the effects of COVID-19 here. And that's very true, and it's factual. Do you think we can see the same in Zimbabwe? Can COVID-19 help to bring down Mnangagwa?
Yes, it can, and it will. But it's not by the will of the people. God works in amazing, wonderful ways. This regime is very good at suppressing dissent. People are not happy. But they know what happens if they try to do what they are. You saw what those Americans were doing at Capitol Hill. We know the amount of force that will be used on the people here. We saw it on August the 1st. We saw it in January again. Was it January last year? We saw it again. But when the time comes, there is a certain force of God, which I want to call a force of nature, which when it comes and God has given the command, things will happen in ways that we don't understand. There is no dictator on earth whom I know who has lived forever and who has oppressed people forever. It doesn't happen. I'm a preacher, so you must forgive me for telling people that it's God who raises up one leader and pulls down another leader. In the fullness of his time, he's going to raise up another leader who is going to do good for Zimbabwe. and pull down leaders who are, in fact, oppressing the people. That is a spiritual fact that no one can alter.
Amen to that. So, folks, with that spiritual evidence from our good doctor, we say thank you so much for being here today. And please look forward to this program tomorrow. We'll be with Dr. Madzorera again tomorrow as we talk about the lockdown, its effects, and what could have been done and what can be done right now. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being with us. We appreciate your time, and please stay safe. You are a doctor, but you can also be affected. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chief, for this opportunity to address the people of Zimbabwe. And thank you to the listeners.
Yes,
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you, Zimbabweans across the world. God bless you, and please be safe wherever you are. Thank you, Chief Soshe, signing off from Padare. We'll meet again tomorrow, 9 p.m. Zimbabwean time. Thank you.